Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu alaikum. Ji ayanu, pakhair agale, ni hao, chunashumme, washbale. Ohaya gonzaimes, guten Morgen, hola, bonjour, privyet, kaifa hal? Hale shumachatore, ahlan wasahlan, marhaba, buna, mucho, gracias, swabia, balli kere aya. Hosh Galdin and Ayo Sayo. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning into PTV World. You're certainly watching What this morning. Alongside my very amazing, very well-learned colleague who happens to be Miss Haja Sati. I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan, and we hope and pray that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well and that you're ready to kickstart your week with us. But first things first, hello Haja, how are you doing and how was your weekend?
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for introducing me. So I came across a very interesting notion and I would really like to ask you.
Sure.
So if you have a very close friend or your best friend but you harbor quite an opposite political views, how would you go about it?
I would certainly not discuss any of my political view or put any of my political view in front of my friend, and this is exactly what I went through while I was, away on this weekend. I wanted to go around my horses at the farm. And so there, when you go to your village, obviously the mindset is very different. So one of my friend, was nominated from another party. The other one was from another party.
Yeah.
And I tried being apolitical. And they were like, hey, you know what are you doing? Because what happens is when you live in a very joint family system, everybody thinks that everybody's going to have the same political inclination. But that's not what the case is. So you really need to respect people's opinion, and you really need to make sure that other people respect your opinion too.
Lovely, lovely.
What about you?
Okay, so I think I would argue with that, but then we would stop the argument where we felt that it's going, it's getting very heated debate when it comes to that. So there is a new book in the town about the Kamila Shamsi has wrote it, and it's about the best of friends. So there are two friends who are growing up in the Karachi, and one of the friend comes from the middle background, middle class background, another is from a very rich background, and then the second part of the novel sets in the UK where they've grown up. One is a divorce and other is even living a very good life there. So the rich friend is actually working with the government there. She's working with the artificial intelligence and devising the espionage system there, the surveillance system there. And the one who belongs to middle class family, she has actually is a lawyer there who's helping out the refugees, giving them the immigration status there. And their work actually clashes with the two opposing political ideologies. And one part of both of the friends says that we always hated one part of our best friend's personality because their political views are very polarizing. And this is how she explored the identity politics out there. So moving on to the favorite aspect of the news, which is about the flood appeals by United Nations. Will launch a fresh appeal for another $800 million on Tuesday for flood relief and rehabilitation activities in Pakistan. This was informed at a meeting between a 6-member delegation led by a Deputy Executive Director of the World Food Programme, Ramiro Lopez de Silva, in Karachi. The WHO Deputy Executive Director said the fresh appeal is being launched because the initial $160 million appeal was insufficient to meet the needs of flood victims. WHO delegation assured to provide all possible assistance to help the flood victims in the difficult times. I think it's wonderful that there is the talk around the climate change aspect of it, and especially the floods have affected us very adversely. So we need to be more prudent and walk the talk around the narrative.
Exactly, and that's exactly happening. But now moving on to sustainable tourism, where, ladies and gentlemen, Pakistan's first ever sustainable tourism conference under the banner of the United Nations World Tourism Organization, organized by LXD and the Gilgit-Baltistan Tourism Department, was held in Gilgit. The conference featured eminent speakers including Minister for Tourism, Gilgit-Baltistan Nasir Ali Khan, Chief Secretary Mohyuddin Ahmed, Dr. Ibrahim Hussain, members of Tourism Department, SCO, EPA, Divya and academia. Speakers highlighted and identified challenges in tourism sector towards the environment and also discussed possible ways to promote tourism in the region along with sustainability of the environment. The conference was also attended by a large number of people from different walks of life.
That's wonderful, and moving on to our third aspect of the...
And it's a good news too as well, I like universities taking such initiatives.
True, true. Lovely. And moving on to another university, which is Allama Iqbal Open University, which is the biggest university of the country, and it is providing distance education where modern technology and tools are used for education. Presently, university administration has waived the semester fee of the students belonging to the flood-affected areas. And I do feel, Shahzad, that is a much needed relief for the students who belong to the flood affected areas, because of course we have seen because of the flooding, the poverty and the inequality has increased a lot because of that. And such sort of social safety net initiatives are very much important in catering to that sort of population.
So exactly, thank you very much to the entire administration of Allama Iqbal Open University for stepping up in the game, and for all of those other universities which can afford to do so. Please make sure that you follow the footsteps of Allama Iqbal Open Universities. But now I have a very important question. This is something which I've been thinking about, probably all my life, because what happens is that for people like me, who are on camera, who go wherever they go, they're public speakers, they really need to represent the society at every front, so no matter what happens. But for that, it is really important for you to work on your own personality, the way you look, the way you talk, the way you behave. And all of these things are going to have a positive impact. Rather, God forbid, if you're not focusing on it, it can have a negative impact on your personality and for the days and the business to come to you. So I think my idea over here is to kind of put in front of my viewers out there that, every single time whenever you wake up in the morning, you have a chance to go seize that opportunity for yourself, but only if that personality is going to be at par with whatever the requirement of the job is. What do you have to say about that?
That's lovely. That's lovely. I think grooming aspect of the personality is extremely important when it comes to our interactions. And it's not just that the grooming reflects your socio-economic background. It reflects a lot of other things like your aesthetic sense, like from which ethnicity, from which religion you belong to, and a lot of things. So I was having this discussion with my family, and I told them, okay, so my parents were like, hey, the folks were introduced by the Muslims, by the Abbasid Empire when it comes to that. And the dinners which is served in the, in the meals, it is also introduced by the Muslims when it comes to that, right? So we think that it is something of the British invention because British introduced this concept. No, it's not like that. And then there are other etiquettes, table manners, which Islam has taught us, but I think we have forgotten those. It's time we remember that. And for that to have a comprehensive grooming of a personality, we have a wonderful personality in our studio who's going to brief us about what exactly the grooming and personality is all about.
So before I introduce our amazing guest, ladies and gentlemen, from New York to Pakistan, he's actually done it for each and every one of the individuals from every walk of life. Imagine you talk about, people who've been affiliated with politics in the United States of America or over here in Pakistan or world over. He's making sure that he's going to groom a lot of people out there. So he happens to be an image consultant, which obviously we certainly need over here in Pakistan. We really do not put a lot of focus on that. We're very lucky that we've been joined by somebody who hails from Lahore as of now, as of today, and he's got a great workshop over there. You go there, he's going to design you from top to bottom. Ladies and gentlemen, he is Mr. Hamid Saeed. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning.
Wa alaikum salam. How are you, sir?
Absolutely perfect. And you know what? That, a few days ago, I was just thinking that it's been so long that we have not conversed, and I seriously wanted you to be on the show, and here you are today.
Yes.
So, it's a blessing in disguise for all of us because we're going to learn quite a lot from you today. So first things first, how important is to have that personality within the society, within the peers you move around? Do you think it is really important to focus on that, or you can just be the way you are?
No, absolutely. I think I'm going to start with that socio-economic level where you belong from.
True.
And it's extremely important. We do come from some segment of the society, either from, affluent or middle class or lower middle class or whatever. Yeah. But the important point is not this, the way we come from, because the cards are already cut, right, whoever we are. The important point is this, that do we look well groomed? If we look well groomed, let me tell you this, no questions are asked.
Okay.
So it's nonverbal communication is extremely important, how we present ourselves. And with non-verbally, what we're saying is how successful we are, how credible we are, how confident we are. And if somebody doesn't look confident, I mean, the game's over.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not that you go to a meeting and say, "I am confident, I am successful, I am," I
you
have
don't
authority.
boast about it yourself.
It's your attire, it's your personality, it's your persona, top to bottom, and that's how you present yourself. And if you don't do that, then let me tell you this, you're opening a whole can of worms about you, and then people start questioning you, and then they say, in their mind, and then when
we're
the
not
picture,
sure about that person.
exactly,
Yeah.
when the picture and the words don't match, what happens is there's a disconnect.
Yeah.
And then disconnect converts into distrust. So if you're in an important position, and which you are, I mean, no matter what you're doing, And if you cannot communicate, non-verbally,
Yeah.
in other words, what I see in Pakistan is that they have very strong academic resume.
Yeah.
But when it comes to visual resume, it's
That's
very
true.
weak.
That's
So
true.
that's what we're talking
And
about.
which is why, I'm going to add over here that, that the university I went to, alhamdulillah, since it was an armed forces
Right.
governed university, so they really would focus on your personality development.
Lovely.
And we were made to study a course which said personality development, and the professor we had, sir, thank you very much for, grooming us, because they would always tell us, that what combinations of ties really need to be out there and the suiting and everything. So they would always focus on that. And that's important. And I see a lot of universities really do not focus on that. But now, sir, that's not what my question is. My question is, what happens, God forbid, that if you certainly do not focus on the way you need to look for the people you surround yourself with, God forbid, what can happen then?
Well, it's a whole, like, if you're not presenting yourself right, people just not going to believe you. Like we said, that if you don't look who you are, I would say always look the part.
Yeah.
I'll give you some examples here. Like recently, I met an American woman and at some of the networking event, and I said, how's your experience in Pakistan? And she said, I have bad and good experience. I said, so forget about the good, we know that, but what's the bad experience?
bad?
And she said that she went to a bank to open up an account, and she was told to see a lady because, the manager thought because she's a woman, so she should go to a woman. And she said, when I looked at her, she didn't look like a banker to me. She was wearing tight dresses, and then it was flowery and all that, like a homey type of dress. And she said she didn't look like a banker, and she said she refused to open an account with her.
Yeah.
And the manager came running and says, what happened, why are you leaving? And then, she said she didn't want to tell. And then the other experience she said she had is that she had a food poisoning, and she went to a hospital, and she said, I want to see the doctor. And there was, again, a lady sitting there. She didn't look like a doctor, but she was a doctor.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she refused. She says, I want a doctor. So this is what happens when you don't present yourself, you don't look the part.
Yeah.
And, I always, I do presentation to judges and all that and the bureaucrats. And I always ask the judges, I say, judges, the question is, do you look like a judge?
Yeah.
Do you, that's where it starts. So a judge should look like a judge, not only in the courtroom, but also out of the
Outside.
courtroom.
But then again, sir, don't you think that we are restricting ourselves just to the good looks and the lustrous hair that we are talking about, the personality grooming? Because if you observe the charismatic readers around the world, for example, Qaid-e-Azam, for example, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, Benazir Bhutto, Maryam Nawaz, when it comes to that.
Amazing fashion sense.
Yes. So is it just distilled into the good looks and the illustrious hairs, or is it more than that to the aspect of the grooming when it comes to that?
Well, there's a whole lot more. I would always say that you should look authentic. You know, let's say, for example, if you're not an honest person and you look honest, so what happens is that when people find out, they get very angry. They say this person deceived us. So I always say this, that whatever is inside should coincide with what's outside. So I would say that you should look very authentic. So I mean, the people that you mentioned here, I mean, they looked the part, and I think they had a lot to present, and I think that's why people listen to them.
Thank you very much for saying that, and I can actually kind of connect with that. And it's because I was at the village, I was around with the people of the village too as well. So you really need to dress accordingly, shalwar kameez and everything. So gentleman walked in and he was like, Shahzad bhai, when we see you on TV, you look very English, but as soon as you're in the village, nobody can tell that you're on TV. But now what I wanted to ask was that, there's this amazing statement. We have heard about this quotation every year while we were growing up, that the fortune favors the bold. Now, when we talk about bold, obviously you really need to kind of take it on your personality first, because that's your first impression, and then obviously your actions. So how do you think, what kind of personality people really need to carry to be bold, and do you think that there can be dangers of being bold too?
Well, I would say that, you should know what your personality is. And one of the things that I say is that you should wear clothing according to your personality. For example, if you are a flamboyant kind of person, right? And if you want to be in the center stage and this and that whole bit, you can look more stylish.
Okay.
You can wear more stylish clothes. You can wear a little bit louder colors, because that goes with your personality. But if you are like a very conservative person, if you say, no, you go ahead and I'm sitting in the back and all this, and if you wear some stylish clothing, you will not even know how to walk, because that's something. Same things when people come to me and they, for job interview, and I ask them, I said, so what do you normally wear? I wear shalwar kameez. So I said, okay, so what do you think you're going to wear at the job interview? And they said, I'm thinking about wearing a three-piece suit. I said, why? You will not be able to, imagine about a guy who has never worn a suit, and when he's walking, or he will forget how to walk. So I would say that in whatever dress that you wear, you should wear that very, like, in the way that it's very coordinated, and it makes that impact. So for Shalwar Kameez, I would say wear it with a waistcoat or with a coat. So if you don't wear that, you just look like an ordinary person. Nothing wrong with looking like an ordinary person, but you're gonna go there, show some respect. That's what it's all about. Dressing is like showing respect.
That's very true, and I really wanted to add to the conversation. So there was this firm which was hiring people, and instead of traditional the interview in the office setting, what they did was that they took the candidates to the restaurant and they had a dinner with them, and they were observing how they're having the dinner with the fork, and then after that they hired the people, because if they said that if they do not have the adequate table manners or the interaction, though how they're going to recruit the clients for them. So the traditional methods are evolving when it comes to the recruitment, because people are a lot more focusing on the personality grooming, right?
They hire the position, they interview you a few times, and they take you out for lunch, and this thing. Because what happens is they wanna see that you are a well-rounded person, and you can. I would say this is very, very important, and a lot of people don't know this, that when you get to that kind of a position, especially higher ups, when let's say from senior management you want to go into C-level, if you don't look the part, they will not take you up there. They will not bring you up there, because it's very, very important. It's all about your dining etiquette. It's how your body language is, how you communicate with people, and obviously how you look.
So, which is why now I'm going to go on another level of this conversation, and that is that, first of all, I know what I'm trying to ask over here, and I can tell you the answer is in my head too as well. Now imagine, I believe that when in terms of personality development we talk about people, we're talking about that segment of the society who are actually looking for jobs. But rather, people who have created jobs are the ones who certainly do not make any fashion statements, may them be billionaires, may them be millionaires, no matter what happens. So for example, people are going to give an example, Mark Zuckerberg, where Mark Zuckerberg, whenever he went for a court hearing, you would see him wearing a suit. That's different. But most of the times, wherever they are, may it be a conference, no matter what happens, since they know that we know it all, we are the ones who are responsible for each and every action we take. Why should we be bothered about looking good or not? So what's that mindset?
Well, the message in Mark Zuckerberg's story is this, that I always promote the same thing. You dress up for the situation, what the situation is.
True.
So let's say, for example, the situation is very relaxed, this and that. You're not going to go there with a three-piece suit and all this. But let me tell you this. The things have changed in both ways. There things got more relaxed, but then there are people like Amazon CEO. He started dressing up a little bit more. And I would say that the situation really warrants what, like you just mentioned, that Mark Zuckerberg knew very well that when he's testifying there, he's not going to go and look wear a t-shirt and whatever jeans he was.
So that the judges in front really do not take an offense, because they, hey, you know what, you really didn't bother about coming to the court, and you came in a jeans, so that you do not offend anybody else. So to dress where you know that I'm not going to offend somebody, do you think that that's really very important? You certainly can be in your comfort zone.
I would say that, be yourself. This is the most important thing. The problem here is in Pakistan is that what I find is that one day you look really, really good.
Yeah.
And then the next day or the day after you look somewhat good.
Yeah.
And then the third day is like you say, are you the same person? So I believe there should be a signature look.
Yeah.
And signature, no matter, you could look really great in a polo and jeans or chinos and all that.
Yeah.
But if the polo, the collars are flying up here, doing all the breakdance, and and the pants are like all over the lot, and they're too long, and this and that whole bit. So how you creating the image? You're not carrying your image.
Which is why, very quickly said towards the end, the only thing I'm going to ask you is that most of the times over here in Pakistan, what happens is that for Pakistani men, their wives take out their clothes, and if the wives know that that my husband is actually a good-looking gentleman, they would certainly try to underrate them with their clothing too as well. At times, I'm not imposing it to, or not. I'm not employing it to everybody.
I think this is coming from the experience.
No. Alhamdulillah, my wife does not take any chance because she knows that I'm on TV. But there's something.
Well, I have a very funny story about this.
Please go ahead.
I went to a doctor's conference and then had to consult them also. It's part of the deal. And funny thing is that all these doctors were lined up like patient. When we sit there, they were all lined up there to see me one by one. So this doctor comes in, and I look at him. I say, "Oh my God! I couldn't believe what he was wearing." So he was wearing a casual shirt, and then he was wearing, casual pant, and then he was wearing tuxedo shoes with it.
Yeah. Okay.
So that really blew me away. I said, like, what gives here? So I didn't know how to start the conversation. He was a senior doctor,
get to the
professor type
shoes,
of thing.
yeah.
So I said to him, how did it happen? So he said, what do you mean, how did it happen? You're talking about my shoes? I said, yes, sir. So he said that, is there anything wrong with it? I mean, when I looked at his CV and all that, this guy was traveling internationally. I said, hope he's not going like this. So anyway, the story came out like this. I said, sir, who selected this? Is my wife. I said, how so? And he said that she went in Dubai, and she knows I like shiny shoes. I mean, polished shoes. And she thought that this was the most shiny shoes, and she got it. So next thing I said, no, you don't wear this. This is with the tuxedos. So the point of the matter is this, that the wives have to be, obviously, they should know the husband's profession and this and that whole bit. I say this all this time, that, with all respect to wives and women in the house, don't ask them how you look, because they're going to say, honey, you look great.
True.
Meri Jaan, this, that whole bit. And because, she has to say this, and because her turn is also going to come. So that's why she's a little bit, has to be careful. If she's going to kill him, he's going to kill her. But this is another point. The point is this, you ask the mirror. You stand in front of the mirror, and you look at the mirror and see, like, if you look successful, if you look credible, if you look trustworthy, if you look, you have confidence, this and that. And if you don't, something is, wardrobe is right there, and change it. If you don't have the right thing in the wardrobe, then, you got to see a person like me. So anyway, that's what I would say, that ask the mirror. Mirror will never lie.
Exactly. Thank you very much, sir, for wrapping it up for us perfectly well as well. For everybody who's out there who really wants to get in touch with Hamid Saeed Saab, he's got a wonderful studio on MM Alam Road. Once you go over there, he fills you up with a lot of entertainment. And then, yes, there's going to be something which is going to carry a lot of burden on your shoulders, because he's going to tell you the truth. But if you are that one resilient person, if you have that personality to change and to conquer the world, ladies and gentlemen, you really need to go see him too as well. With that, we're actually heading out towards a short break. Don't go anywhere. Just today, I need to share this. Just today, because the last time when I met him, he was like, wear longer socks, so that your skin does not show. And today, since I was running late, so I was all over the cupboard, and I was like, hey, where did my long socks go? And I was like, okay, I'm going to tell Hamid Saab not to pinpoint my socks today, because I couldn't find the longer ones. But yes, obviously, at times, you really need to make the ends meet. But at times, you can certainly put in the effort. Once you start to put in the effort, you reap the results. You will continue with that flavor of your life. And that's something which is important. Personality is very important. Please make sure that you work on that. We're heading out towards a short break. Once you guys will come back, the society we live in is as important as personality. Let's talk about that. Good morning.
Welcome back, and before going on to the break, we were having a discussion on the personality grooming and how it reflects the space that we are occupying currently. So talking about this space and the concept around it, so today is 3rd of October and it's observed as the World Habitat Day. And why is there a need to observe such kind of a day? Because we have only one planet Earth in which we live, and if we do not have it, if we do not care about the health of the planet, then I don't know how we are going to live about that, right? And it affects so many aspects of a personality when it comes comes to the habitat. For example, poverty, for example, inequality, for example, the inclusivity, how does it affect them? So people who are living in the more elitist setup, are they affected by the inequality, poverty as equally as the people who are living in the less economic setups, right?
Which is why, ladies and gentlemen, today World Habitat Day is being observed across the globe, including Pakistan, to reflect on the state of human settlements and people's right to sufficient shelter. The theme for this year's World Habitat Day is Mind the Gap, Leave No One and Pace Behind. It is also aimed at reminding people that they're responsible for the habitat of future generations. Various activities across Pakistan would be organized to examine the problems of rapid urbanization and its impact on the environment and human poverty. The United Nations World Habitat Day was first celebrated in 1986 with the theme, Shelter is My Right.
Right, definitely. And Shahzad, I do feel that we need to harmonize the human behavior with the laws of the nature, because that is how we can come up with the one integrated approach about how to habitat, how to live in this planet.
Well, I don't think that, in years to come it's going to happen, because for people like Elon Musk who really want the world's population to grow so that they can go settle on another planet, have a very different and a very passionate mindset in terms of when we talk about habitat. But yes, I believe that in days to come, humans might be able to achieve that. But for now, for whatever the given resources are, that's going to stay limited for all of us, and we really need to leave behind something amazing for our future generations. But there are these three C's which we are focusing on today, and that is climate change, and then COVID at this first place, and then conflict. So imagine all of these three things, in the recent days have actually told us that, hey, you know what, we really need to harmonize, we really need to synergize to make sure that the habitat we're going to leave behind for the future generations actually enables them to do well, rather than, God forbid, being in a problem. And when we talk about urbanization, a lot of people flock into cities so that they can actually have a good life. But, that's not really the reality for majority of the people. So what happens is that rather when they come, leave behind their places and come to the cities to settle over here, there's a number of 163 million people have moved down to the poverty line once again, just because of the fact that their dreams weren't realized and weren't really close to reality. So even when they came to the urbanization part of the society, it really didn't help them. So how do we mind that gap? How do we bridge it for each and every one of us is something which we will be talking about today.
Right, lovely. So I would readily introduce my guest. So we're very lucky that we have been joined by Professor Zamir Awan Sahab, who happens to be analyst. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and thank you so much for coming to our show. Right, lovely. So we have also been joined by Dr. Ijaz Ahmed, who happens to be environmentalist. Assalamu alaikum, sir, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, sir, once again. So, let's get the conversation started with Professor Saab. So, Professor Saab, for us, what we understood, we have shared it with our audiences. What do you take of World Habitat Day, and what's the way forward? Let's talk about that first.
In fact, housing is a basic necessity of humankind.
True.
And it is international phenomena that most of the countries are still lacking the sufficient housing.
True.
Especially the developing world. Pakistan is also facing severe shortage of the housing.
True.
We are living in the Islamabad.
So don't say that there will be so many property dealers looking for society land now. And we really need to think about it, because there's not enough planning in the urbanization going on in Pakistan.
We will come to that, that sector too. In fact, many people are traveling from outside Islamabad, in the outskirts and nearby cities, to Islamabad every day, because there is a shortage of housing in Islamabad.
True.
I believe that there is a huge scope for housing and requirement of housing in all big cities and all over the world, especially in Islamabad. The problem is that housing is very expensive. It's not affordable for a common man. If a government servant is getting limited salary, he is not able to construct his own house.
True.
It is the responsibility of the system, of the government, to make arrangements where they can facilitate everybody to have his own house.
True.
First of all, these societies and the land mafia should be brought under control, and new technologies should be introduced for the low cost housing.
Exactly.
The housing should be environment friendly, meeting the requirement of the environment and green technologies.
True.
It is not necessary that everybody should have a big house. It should be manageable and as per the requirement of the family. It should be affordable. In the Western world, the banks are extending loans and mortgages, and there are many systems and many incentives for the common people to have their own house. In Pakistan, we need to learn from the developed world how they are facilitating their common citizen. In Pakistan, the issue is quite serious.
True.
That's true. And moving on to Dr. Ijaz Saab, so I really wanted to comment on the gender aspect of the World Habitat Day, because the space we are inhabiting in the moment is, of course, we're talking about the inclusivity. It means bringing all the marginalized sectors into that, minding the gap and bridging that gap when it comes to that. So in the South Asian culture, we have seen that when it comes to women, there is a restriction on the mobility. Why? Because it is closely intertwined with the notions of honor. So a lot of women do not or hesitate complaining about the harassment they face on the streets. Why? Because they feel that their households would ask them, or the gharwalas would ask them not to go outside because the safe is not space, right, out there. How do you conceptualize the safe spaces, or the lack, or the perception of the lack of the safe spaces when it comes to that?
Well, I think generally when we talk about fill in the gap, so basically for me there is a problem with the planning.
Right.
There is a problem with the urban planning as well as rural planning.
True.
What are the root causes that why people move from the rural setting to the urban setting? Because they don't have facilities at their own places. They don't have facility of good healthcare, education, even livelihood related like options very limited.
Right.
And people want actually to fulfill their dreams, as you mentioned. So they have to move into those areas where they see that okay, there is a place where they can fulfill their dreams, and they try to like just move over there.
True.
And the urban planning is not actually catering that kind of movement. Because most of the, even if you talk about Islamabad, Islamabad about maybe 25 years ago, there was hardly any slum area. But now you see many areas which have actually kachi abadis, and then it's again when you talk about inclusiveness, I think that there is a big gap in that, because most of the planning is done keeping in mind for maybe richer people, those who have resources. When we talk about transport, we actually focus on expanding the roads. We don't look into the availability of mass transit or transportation for those areas where these slums are found, or kachi abadis.
Right.
So I think there is a need to look into this kind of planning, where the inclusiveness is the major actually focus and vision of the planning. And whether it's a woman, whether transgender, whether like you talk about marginalized communities,
right,
people with disabilities, I think we hardly recognize their needs.
True.
And ultimately end up with like a chaotic situation.
True.
Where no one is happy.
Exactly, which is why, sir, with Professor Saab, I have a very different question to pose. Now, since the theme says that, mind the gap.
Right.
Now, when we talk about mind the gap, which automatically means that even within the rural areas, the same facilities should be available. We
True.
talk about education, we talk about health facilities, and these are the facilities which actually kind of make the communities over there inclined towards moving to the cities. Now, what I witnessed, since I was in Mandi Bahawaldeen over the weekend, there's hardly any road. I'm very sorry, but I have to put it this way. And for the last 4.5 years, the Punjab government was by PTI, so, and the political inclination of that particular area is by people who support PMLN. Now, imagine that, just because of our political priorities, we certainly do not or refuse to give all of that infrastructure facility which the people might require, depending on where do they have the most voter. So imagine if that's the kind of priority, how do you think we are going to mind the gap? How do you think that the government really needs to prioritize it in a way that we give them what they require?
It's a wonderful question.
It is very unfortunate. The gap between the urban and the rural area is huge. Especially some part of Pakistan is really very backward. We don't talk about Punjab only.
True.
In some far-flung areas, of course, the gap
Exactly.
is huge. But we should have an rational approach. It is not possible that the whole country is on the same level of development. Even that in the developed world, the big cities and the urban areas, there is a gap. But at least the basic facilities like hospitals, schooling,
सर सड़क नहीं है
roads,
जिधर उधर क्या होना
electricity, internet, these things we can extend to all parts of Pakistan.
Exactly.
These are the things which
So
the
how do we
basic needs.
prioritize it nationally? Now that's what my question is. Now imagine that if in the province the government is not the same government which is in the federal. So what they do is that wherever they have a major chunk of their voter, they would do the development work over there, but rather ignore the people who might not even be in their voters' bank. So for a country to develop, for us to kind of mind that gap, what we really need to do is that the government needs to prioritize the needs according to how people will utilize the infrastructure developing over there. But that's not certainly our priority. We talk about inclusivity over here on television, but that's something which is not seen in the provincial government's mindset.
In fact, in Pakistan, the political system is different than the developed countries. We need the basic democracy, union council. They should solve these problems. Our MNAs and MPAs are doing the job of a councillor. That is wrong. This concept we have to change it. Basic developments are the responsibility
everybody.
of the local governments and local councillors and local representatives. And the MNAs and MPAs should focus on the policy matters, how to develop the country, the region, the whole province, the whole district. I mean, they are the policy makers, they are legislators. The development work should be done by the local governments.
Right. Coming back to Dr. Ijaz Saab, so since you are an environmentalist, and I really wanted to ask, because we are living in an anthropogenic age where human system is encroaching upon the other ecologies, right? So when we are talking about the World Habitat Day, I think we should also include the ecologies, we should include the flora and fauna and how we are adversely impacting the diversity when it comes to that. Then Shahzad very aptly mentioned that climate change is one of the aspects of the World Habitat Day that we are observing today, and how when we are encroaching upon the natural ways or the laws of the nature is striking back when it comes to the climate change. How do we make sure that we are inclusive also of the ecology when it comes to that?
I think this is a very difficult question. In a sense, we all know that there is a ditch right in front of us, and we still want to go and go inside and see what kind of khazana it has, what kind of jewels it had. But this is, I think, again, a failure of our planning, because whenever we talk about any planning, the environmental impact assessment is the key document.
Right.
And that document, most of the people even don't see that. They just stamp it, and the environmental impact is ignored. And during the construction, during the development, and then the operation of any project, the environmental issues come in a way that they affect on a long-term basis. You don't see obvious result right in a year or 2 years time, but ultimately maybe after 10 years or 20 years you come to know, just take example of paper mulberry.
Right, that's true.
Paper mulberry was introduced to improve the vegetation of Islamabad.
Right.
And now it is one of the major concern of citizen and the development agency CDA, that how to get rid of this paper mulberry, because the environmental consequences, the issues which were related to environment were not considered. And even if they were highlighted by some of the mad people or surfire like us, they don't care. So I think that is one of the major failure on our part as well as at the planning part. The current situation of floods, I think we need to look into the planning, because most of the infrastructure has been damaged, especially in Sindh and southern Punjab. So while constructing, while new development process, we need to look into this environmental aspect, the green recovery that we have been talking earlier as well. Unless we don't consider that, I think most of the situation, I always give example of Lahore, because there they have actually these dungi grounds on both sides of the old roads. They have ditches where water can stand and it can actually infiltrate and then it becomes part of the aquifer.
True.
So that is not happening anywhere. I mean, like the roads are actually blocking
Right.
and they are creating problems.
Right.
So the environmental issues, if they are kept during the planning process, I think we will face lesser damages.
Right.
So these issues have to be kept at the planning stage and then implemented religiously.
Okay,
Exactly.
Professor Zamir Saab, I really wanted to ask you, since Shahzad mentioned the issue of the urbanization and the extreme fast-paced urbanization that is going on, and it is believed by the end of this century, 80 to 90% of the population will move towards the city in the need of the basic amenities which are not available in the village level, right? So, and there is this concept coming up called the counter industrialization or the counter urbanization, and which should be more sustainable when it comes to that. How can we make sure that there remains a parity between the urban and the rural life?
In fact, the developments are something which we cannot oppose and we cannot stop it.
True, true.
There is a natural phenomena,
Right.
and every country has a right to develop.
True.
Even that in the developed world, they have industrialized their country,
Right.
and they have the same problem of urbanization, and even that they have polluted the environment. But once they have sufficient money, their economy was strong enough to address the environmental issues, then they pay attention to the environmental issues.
Right.
In Pakistan, unfortunately, we are doing nothing.
True.
Neither industrialization nor protection of
Urbanization,
environment.
yes.
One thing I want to say about the housing society which the Shahzad asked me initially.
Right.
In fact, the housing societies in Pakistan are really making a lot of problem for the environment, for many other things. First of all, there are many fake housing societies.
True.
Cheating is there. They are grabbing the land. They are selling on the very high price. They are making unlimited margin of profits.
Yep.
But fortunately, the system in Pakistan, the governance system, is very comprehensive. There are organizations, departments, and institutions who are supposed to have check and balance on them. Unfortunately, these institutions are employed are not based on the merit.
Yeah.
And some of them are greedy, some of them are corrupt, some of them are part of mafia. And why the housing societies are damaging is not contributing toward the national development.
Exactly.
We need to strengthen and implementation of the rules and regulation on the housing societies.
And so
we need the right people to head these departments and institutions who should bring under control the housing society.
Exactly. And sir, in addition to that, obviously there's lesser research and lesser focus on how the resilient designs need to come up, because we have been building cities of concrete, which in result will definitely damage our environment and the habitat we live in as well, in addition to that. But amongst all of these cascades of challenges my wonderful colleague has been putting in front of you, I think there's one more, and that is conflict. Now imagine world over, if we see obviously Syria, we see Ukraine, there are multiple places where we can mention that the conflict's going on, and obviously what they will be left behind to live with. But even over here in Pakistan, there's this political turmoil which everybody's been used to of now. Every single day, we come to our work, me and Haja, there's tons of containers in between, and it actually kind of hinders the economic activity of that very place. Now imagine for me and Haja not to attend the show, one day salary is gone, and the way you budget yourself is to kind of get all of that salary. In fact, anything extra on top of that too as well, which is not really the case. Now what happens is that, for people who do not get a fair chance of going to their economic activity and indulging in an economic activity, will leave, first of all, them behind, then the place they work at, and then individually, if you look at it, it may be the province, may be a capital or a city, it's going to lag behind because the economic activity is being damaged every single day due to political turmoil. And when we talk about habitat in future, we really need to work towards that. How do we do that?
Well, I think it's again, it's not only like job-related conflicts. There are other
Business-related
conflicts
too.
Other than that,
Yep.
like for example, extraction of water.
True.
Gas nahi sir, bijli nahi, factory nahi chal rahi, band
Yeah,
ho gayi,
or
bade masle.
space, or clean drinking water.
True.
So there are so many different conflicts. So I think again it comes back to planning.
Yep.
I mean, what kind of plannings do we have in order to cater for this kind of situation? Do we need to build a parade ground, or maybe like a conflict ground where people come and they sit, put their whatever ihtijaj, and then ultimately like everybody other than the protest
Yeah, people who protest,
who
yeah.
are protesting, they have their own space, and then the
उनको तो
business
सर
as,
510 मिल
the
जाते हैं।
business business as usual carry on. So ultimately I think again, I mean, like, there is a need to have an exclusive
Right.
place where people can go, and it's just like Hyde Park. People can go and express their feeling and protest, and nobody is suffering from that.
And that obviously is a process of being a democratic system. But thank you very much, Dr. Saab. Thank you very much, Professor Saab, for being with us. Lovely to be in conversation with you. And for each and every individual who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, we celebrate and observe such days on television so that we start to talk about it. Once you start to talk about an issue, only then you're going to go towards the solution of it. What do you have to say
Right,
about it?
and one important take from this entire conversation is that we need to harmonize the human behavior, which should be in concert with the laws of the nature, because pandemics, because climate change, that has all reinforced this thing very clearly, that we need to be more mindful of how we live in that space. when it comes
Exactly,
to
and
that.
please never be blindfolded by one political figure, and kind of do not have that harmony, because we first of all really need to put our country on top priority, whether what's good for the country, and then come down towards what political decisions we have for our lives.
Right.
And this is exactly the same thing with which we started the show, and I want to end up with that. Please never be blindfolded by any one individual, who actually kind of aligns with your political identity. Please make sure that first up, it's the country. Whoever does good for the country is good for us. Till the next time, look after yourselves. Good morning. Allah Hafiz.